Shabbat shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rob Shmuel with you. And as you can see, I'm dressed a little bit for spring. After all, it is the month of Nisan. And the Hebrew month of Nisan was named later. Uh, so originally, the months of the Hebrew year did not have names. It was like the days of the week. There are no names, official names for the days of the week. Shabbat is Shabbat, and the day after Shabbat is Yom Rishon. It's the first day. The day after Yom Rishon, which corresponds to our Sunday, it's Sunday, yes. Monday is Yom Sheni, the second day, and it's the second day after Shabbat. So this is how the months are set up. Now, this week, little spoiler alert, we also have Shabbat HaGadol, which is the Sabbath before the Passover. Last week, we had addition to our regular portion, we had Shabbat HaChodesh. It was the Sabbath of the months. When God first said, okay, we're going to start, you're going to have your own calendar, and we're going to start counting the months from the spring, the month of Aviv. Aviv is the Hebrew word for spring. Yes, Tel Aviv, Spring Hill. So after that, they just counted the months, and they didn't really name the months until it was really a Babylonian influence, as I understand it. And they just kind of borrowed some of the names from that, and they became the names of the month. So this is the first month of the year. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute. What about Rosh Hashanah? Isn't that the beginning of the year? Rosh Hashanah is actually in the month of Tishrei, or the month that we now call Tishrei, which is the seventh month of the year. Being seven, it is the spiritual new year, because after all, seven is a number of completion, and the seventh day is Shabbat. Seventh month is a spiritual new year. The month of Aviv, or what we call now Nisan, which is the month of spring, or Nisan, is actually the secular year. It's when contracts are ratified, when a new king ascends the throne, things like that. So I figured, since it's the month of Aviv, since we are kind of in spring and we're approaching Passover, I thought I'd dress a little casual today, when we do our parsha. Okay, so Metzora, Parsha Metzora. What is Parsha Metzora? And usually I take about, well, I call it a 10-minute Torah, but yes, it's actually 11 minutes. So what are we going to talk about for 11 minutes about Metzora? Metzora is the purification process of all the skin ailments, or most of the skin ailments, that we had in the last Parsha. And by the way, these two Parshas are typically together during non-leap years. And in some leap years, they're also together. So why do we double up Parshas? And do we just pick any two, or what? No, actually, there are specific Parshas that the sages decided we should put together. Since Parshat Tazria discussed a lot of the skin maladies, and Metzora really is about the remedy, the spiritual remedies of these Parshas, it just seemed natural that these two should go together whenever it's not a leap year. Now, sometimes in some leap years, they are together. Why? Well, there are 54 Torah Parshas. They divided into 54, or so. So during a leap year, when there is the extra month, an extra 4 weeks, not an issue. There are times, however, when we have a holiday like Passover, Shavuot, that starts on Shabbat. Now, during Passover, which is the week following this parsha, there's a special Torah reading because for what's called the intermediate day. So Passover is 8 days out here in the diaspora. It's 7 days in Israel. So during that specific time when we have the Sabbath that is during the month of Passover, it's a special Torah reading. Now, out here, and Sukkah too, out here in the diaspora, out here in what some people call exile, what happens when you've got Passover or Sukkot starting on the Sabbath? In Israel, not a problem. It's 7 days. Your next Shabbat is going to be a regular Torah reading. But here, it's going to be another Shabbat. We add in a special Torah reading, which means that we bump the next parsha in succession to the following week. And that's why sometimes you will see two different schedules. One schedule is for outside of Israel, one schedule is inside Israel. And down the road, we double up one of those specific designated parshas to be double so that we can kind of catch up to Israel. So that's kind of how the flow goes. So Metzora, we have the spiritual remedies after a person has basically cleared their skin. Well, let's call it what it is, a rash. And the priest says, okay, you're clean, you're fine. You can go into the camp. But first, we need to do a sacrifice. We need to do some purification. So usually if a person is of means, it could be a sheep, it could be a ram. You have a sin offering, then a burnt offering, a sin offering, because obviously this didn't happen out of the blue. You did something that warranted this skin malady. And it's not just, you touched the wrong body of water. A lot of the rabbis feel that this has to do with maybe somebody that gossiped a little too much. After all, why see a priest? Why not, a medical person or whatever kind of doctors they had back then? I don't know that priests doubled as doctors. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But this is kind of how it went. Then it discusses what happens when Israel conquers the land and you go to your house, you settle in a new house, and lo and behold, I love the word behold, then behold, there are green or red blotches on the walls. Then what do you do? What does that mean? Well, you call the priest. Priest looks at it and says, okay, it's a malady for the house. And we take the brick out. Now, in the Art Scroll, which is the Orthodox movement Chumash, they say that what happened was when we went into the land of Canaan and settled it and conquered it and settled it, some of the indigenous tribes that were there, or some of the indigenous nations, just left their homes, or they left some riches inside the house. And this was a way of people pulling a brick out and say, oh, look at this, look what I found. I don't know that I quite buy that. It sounds a little severe that people would do that and we take goods from them. All right, granted, these people didn't have the greatest practices. They were dirty. Their spiritual practices involved maybe some habits that we wouldn't consider clean, or, sacrificing people. But I don't know. I'm kind of reserving judgment on that. But that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that maybe some of this malady that we have infected into the house. Maybe the house got infected because we were engaging in Lashon Hara while we were in the house. Who knows? But anyway, the treatment was to maybe pull the bricks out and replace them. And if the whole house was that, you just destroy the house. The house is bad for whatever reason. The other thing that we discuss is what happens if somebody has a discharge that is not within the usual time or in the usual type of discharges that people have. Well, there's a purification process for that as well. Again, a person is quarantined outside the camp for a period of time, and then the priest will come and look, or what have you. Now, here's a question I have. When we talk about unusual secretions or discharges, a lot of times we're talking about females, and the priests were males. Now, one thing I've never seen, now there were no female priests back then, it was all men that did this. Men are on spiritually lower level. So it's the men that have to resolve a lot of the differences, the lusts and aggression that men have, and we do. A lot of us put it to some good use. We play sports. We like to, kind of get it out of our system. But unfortunately, some men get tempted. They give in to these urges, to be aggressive or whatever. So we kind of have to watch it, whereas women don't seem to have the same urge or the same level of urges. I know people are going to take me to task for, the modern era and whatever, but, it's the way it was. So I don't know that I would imagine, with the way the Torah goes on about forbidden relationships and about the purity and about the respect that you have for the two different genders, the male and the female, I would imagine that there would have to have been a woman involved. I don't know that I've ever encountered this in the Talmud, and there's a whole order. Okay, we have tractates, which are different topics, but the tractates are part of different orders or seeds, moedim as they call them. And there's a whole tractate of women, gitin, which is divorces, kiddushin, which is betrothals, things like that, ketubim, which is the ketubah for the marriage thing. So I've never really seen any discussion on that, and that's interesting. Maybe I should write a response on what they call it. Okay, so again, the cleanliness is purity, and we want to be a clean people. Is it about health? Is it about spirituality? Probably about both. When you feel clean, you feel good, right? I mean, that's the way it is. One last word about the eclipse we just had. People have asked me about the Jewish view of eclipse. Now, some Jews back in the old days thought it was a bad omen. Okay, and again, I don't subscribe to omens or anything. Other people say, it's a natural occurrence. There are prayers to say when you see lightning or thunder, a natural occurrence, and you would say that particular prayer too. All right, so Shabbat Shalom, happy Passover, and hope to see you at our second Seder. Shabbat Shalom and thank you.